The information in this video is important for your safety on this project. Gray's #1 goal is that every day you go home safe, the same way you came to work. You and your loved ones depend on it. If you have any questions about the material covered in this video, please write your questions down during the video so you'll remember to ask your supervisor or anyone on the Gray team at the end of the orientation session. It's important to ask anytime you have a question.
The averages tell us that 3 people will die today on construction sites throughout the United States. Hi, I'm Stephen Gray, and I'm the CEO of Gray Construction. Workplace fatalities mainly happen in 4 ways: falls, electrocutions, caught in between, and struck by. Now remember, all incidents are preventable, and you can prevent incidents by following your company's safety plan, listening to what we have to say here today, and making good personal decisions on the job site. If you feel that you're ever in an unsafe situation, then you have the right and the responsibility to stop work, seek additional training, or develop a better work plan for that activity. On this job site, safety comes first. If you feel this is ever not the case, then contact your supervisor. You can also contact the Gray site leadership. And finally, thanks for putting safety first.
Construction is a dangerous business, and this orientation is offered to help focus you on the importance of safety. The top 4 causes of workplace-related fatalities at construction sites are falls, electrocution, struck by, and caught between incidents. We expect you've already had safety training with your supervisor. If you haven't, talk to your supervisor after this orientation. And if you ever have any questions about the work you're performing or any other safety-related questions, stop and ask your supervisor. And here's why.
And you get a young person that comes onto the job site, the employee goes over there and grabs a chop saw and doesn't recognize that the blade in the actual chop saw is not the right blade for cutting metal. And, he starts the chop saw up and he starts cutting steel with a masonry blade. And then the next thing you know, the blade just breaks apart. And it's literally shrapnel. Somebody's been permanently injured, due to an incident that if they would have just said stop, and asked their supervisor for training, or am I doing this safely, it could have all been prevented.
It's always better to stop and ask. Let's get started with the proper clothing. Most people don't see the clothes you wear for your job as safety equipment, but wearing the wrong clothes can jeopardize your safety. Make sure you come to work dressed to work safely. When working on a job site, clothes are likely to get caught in equipment, hung on material, or torn, and can also cause you to fall. Always wear shirts with at least a 3-inch sleeve. Wear properly fitted long pants and the correct boots for the work you're performing. Safety-toed boots are required. Leave your sleeveless shirt at home. Leave your baggy pants at home. Never wear athletic shoes or soft shoes. And leave all jewelry at home so it doesn't get caught in machinery. If you have any questions regarding the proper clothing, ask your supervisor or a member of Gray's management team. Improper clothing will result in you being asked to leave the job site. Gray's project-specific safety plan and OSHA requirements mandate proper personal protective equipment. A hard hat, safety glasses, proper high-vis clothes, and gloves are mandatory at all times for everyone on the job site.
Here at Gray, we've made the decision to switch from the conventional hard hat to the safety helmet, such as this one. The conventional hard hat provides only rating for drop impact protection, whereas a safety helmet is rated for the front, side, and rear impact protection. Chin strap will also help keep the hard hat on the employee in the event of a fall or an object striking the employee. With this decision, the safety helmet will provide greater protection for all of our employees on all of our Gray projects.
Your hands are your most used and most important tool and must be protected when performing any manual construction activity. Proper hand protection is required to be worn for any activity on a Gray project. Some tasks require specialized gloves. Level 3 and 4. Aramid or Kevlar fiber gloves are cut and abrasive resistant. They wear well and protect against moderate heat and cold. Level 3 gloves are recommended when performing light glass application. Level 4 gloves are recommended when handling glass and sheet metal. Gray recommends Level 3 and 4 gloves for the majority of tasks on a construction site. These are a few of the gloves available to protect your hands while on a construction site. If you're not sure what type of gloves to use for the work you're performing, stop and ask your supervisor. Even though your gloves can protect you from most lacerations, they cannot protect your hands from being pinched or smashed. When a caught-between hazard exists, use tag lines or push sticks when feasible.
I was in Louisiana down at the Drax project working as a superintendent for the concrete division. We were pouring some concrete. I was helping our subcontractor out. We had a welding machine on a trailer that was in our way, and we needed to move it. So I guess Stephen Gray says I had yellow fever, and I was trying to get this out of the way real quick. We had concrete on the truck that was getting hot. Grabbing the trailer, I stuck my hand up in the tongue of the trailer and pulled it. I only had to move it just a short distance, and thinking I could turn it around. And in the meantime, it was moving a little faster than anticipated. Backed it into a concrete wall, pinched my finger, crushed it. Anyway, wound up, I lost a finger, with this incident. I should have done, it's just said stop, whenever I realized, that we had the problem of being in the way, and thought about it for a minute and done it in the right way.
Along with the proper hand protection, hand placement is also critical. Keep your hands out of pinch points where they could get struck or caught in between. The Gray Safety Analysis, referred to as the GSA, is important for your safety. Every task requires a specific GSA, and this will help you recognize the potential hazards of the work you're about to do. You'll find out exactly what additional personal protective equipment and training is needed, and you'll discuss how to eliminate hazards on the job. Your supervisor will go over the GSA with you. If you have any questions, stop and ask. Additional personal protective equipment and training may be required for specific tasks, such as a respirator, hearing protection, or a face shield. Be sure to review this with your supervisor when completing the GSA prior to performing work. Many materials are unloaded, stored, and moved on a job site every day. Utilizing the proper equipment and rigging to safely perform these tasks is important. Loads and materials to be moved or lifted shall be evaluated to know the weight and appropriate equipment to perform the task. Some lifting techniques require specialized rigging and safety analysis to be performed. Before moving or lifting materials with equipment, make sure you know what is required and talk to your supervisor. Materials that are to be stored and moved at a later time should be placed on cribbing so they are secure from being tipped over. Cribbing, or dunnage, helps to provide a footprint for the material stability and also allows equipment or rigging to be safely applied to the load for lifting. Seatbelts must always be used when operating moving equipment. If you're not trained, certified, or qualified to operate a piece of equipment, don't operate it. Remember the fatal four: falls, electrocution, struck by, and caught between incidents? Let's look at some dangerous situations regarding falls.
The young gentleman, Kenny, was always had two lanyards on his belt, was always tied off. Never once had to call him down for tie off. But he was in a awkward position of moving from one joist girder to the other. And in that split second when he unhooked to reach and grab and hook the other, he got hit. He got struck by a joist coming in. He fell and died that night. Is that he was this far from being hooked. Quarter of an inch from being hooked, being secure. And the joist hit him at that exact moment.
Many workers are injured or killed every year in the construction industry. Follow the rules. Don't let this happen to you. Often you'll be required to work at elevated levels, and you need to protect yourself from a fall.
If you're walking up there, you're doing steel, and you're not properly tied off, okay, and let's say you fall, your world is over, it's done. Everything changes on a dime. You have to be aware of what you're doing.
Anytime you're 6 feet or more above the ground or working in an aerial lift, you must be tied off 100% of the time. You're required to inspect your fall protection device before exposing yourself to a fall hazard. Your supervisor is required to explain the steps to inspecting the device. Ask if you don't know how.
I'm a perfect example of that safety works. Was up on the 4th floor, working close to the edge. The load went out, I went out with it. It worked. It worked. The harness did its job, and I'm here to tell you that. Safety pays off for your benefit, for you to go home to your family.
The acknowledgement statement that you'll be asked to sign at the completion of this video states, "I understand that my employment on this project is dependent on following these rules. If the safety rules are not followed, I understand that I will be reprimanded or removed from the project." Gray feels this strongly about your safety. There is always overhead work being done on a construction site, and it is critical that we protect against falling objects. There are many things to consider concerning dropped objects. Secure material and tools. Barricade or use a spotter to ensure no one enters the area of overhead work. Keep the floor of lifts clean so material doesn't get kicked off. Utilize toe boards on elevated work surfaces. Believe it or not, the ladder is the cause of many accidents. Ladders should always be a secondary choice when having to work in an elevated situation. When working on a ladder, it must be secured. For example, you must tie the ladder off or have someone hold the ladder for you. Always keep a 3-point connection and never work outside the rails of the ladder, and it's always a best practice to use fall protection. In every case, you must be sure the top of the ladder is at least 42 inches above the landing where you're working. The bottom of the ladder must be set up in a 4-to-1 angle. This means that for every 4 feet up, the ladder must be 1 foot out at the bottom. Use a step ladder only on a stable and level surface, and be sure that all locks are properly engaged. When inspecting a ladder, look for broken or cracked side rails and missing feet. Always keep the ladder free from grease and oil, and never paint the ladder. Make sure you know the total capacity of the ladder and the weight of the job you are performing. Here at Gray, we have a ladder's last policy that states the belief that ladders should be the last choice for means of access for elevated work tasks. The construction industry has the highest ladder fall injuries rate compared to other industries. By utilizing task planning and coordination, other means of access for elevated work tasks can be achieved, reducing the potential for ladder-related injury. Man lifts, scaffolding, and stairways are preferred. Please consult your supervisor or a Gray team member before making the decision to use a ladder for elevated work activities or access to elevated areas.
Ladders are dangerous. Follow these procedures and avoid situations where you and your coworker can fall.
It is critical that only a competent person trained in scaffolding erections should supervise the assembly, disassembly, and inspection of a scaffold. Your supervisor is in charge to appoint the proper people to handle this job. You must inspect your scaffold daily before work. Make sure it is fully planked. Ensure the X-bracing is properly located throughout the scaffolding. Make sure it is placed on a stable base with proper foot plates attached. And make sure fall protection equipment is provided as required by Gray and OSHA. It is also very important to locate overhead power lines before you begin working. You're required to stay at least 20 feet away from overhead power lines at all times. All scaffolding must be protected from mobile equipment traffic by barricades such as jersey barriers or other means.
If you ever have any questions or have not been fully trained in scaffolding safety, stop and ask your supervisor to review it with you. Remember, it's always best to ask.
Now let's focus on another one of the fatal 4, electrocution, a life-threatening danger on every job site.
What was actually a very simple electrical matter, a bad relay in a relay panel, ended up being much more for this young man who chose, without training, without being an electrician, chose to follow a troubleshooting path without checking in with anyone. And he opened up a J-box that he thought had something to do with the lights, that was above the lights. And unfortunately, this J-box had 480 volt power in it. And somehow he ended up grounding himself to the structure, and in this power, and unfortunately he was killed.
Hundreds of construction workers are killed every year. Don't let this happen to you. Electricity can seriously hurt or kill instantly. That's why it's so important to use precaution when working around electricity. When using an electrical tool or working with a source of electricity, always ensure all equipment is properly grounded. Inspect the equipment before using it for damage to the cord, and take all damaged parts out of service immediately. Never use electricity in a wet or damp condition, and disconnect electrical equipment when you're not using it. Lockout-tagout is the procedure that must be followed before you or anyone begins work on any tool or equipment that has been energized in any form, such as with electricity, air, or hydraulics. This means all switches, breakers, and valves must be turned off and padlocked so that no one can gain access to them and turn them on. The padlock must be tagged stating "out of service" and have the employee's name that is working on the tool or equipment. Electricity is dangerous and can kill you instantly. Your supervisor is required to train you in this procedure and provide materials for lockout-tagout.
By now, you know what I'm going to say. If you ever have any questions about electrical safety, ask your supervisor. It's never a good idea to work without the proper training. Construction workers are fatally injured by electricity every year in our industry. Following these procedures will prevent this from happening to you or your coworker.
In a crisis situation, how will you react? Seconds can save a life.
Muster area here, anytime anything happens, weather.
There are individuals on the job site trained in crisis management in the event of an emergency, such as a major accident or severe weather. Each project has a crisis management plan, and your supervisor is required to review the plan with you. Know the plan. If you don't know, ask. If you're injured on the job site, there are people trained in first aid and CPR who can help you. It is your responsibility to immediately notify your supervisor if an incident occurs, no matter how minor. There are many kinds of chemicals used every day on the job. It's important to know the type of chemicals you could be exposed to. Your employer is required to train you annually according to the Hazardous Communications Standard. Silica is a common mineral. Our exposure primarily comes from cutting, grinding, drilling, or blasting materials like concrete, stone, and brick. Silica particles are very small and cannot be seen with the naked eye. Inhaling silica dust can lead to silicosis, an incurable lung disease that can be fatal if severe enough. Those with too much silica exposure can also develop lung cancer, kidney disease, and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Employers must make training, proper PPE, and appropriate control measures available to workers who may have an occupational exposure to silica. If you find yourself working in a cloud of dust generated by work that is disturbing silica, stop work immediately and contact your supervisor. A HazCom identification label, which looks like this, is located on containers with hazardous chemicals. These labels and pictograms identify the contents and hazards of the chemicals, so you'll know how to handle them. Safety data sheets like this one are located on each job site and are required to be kept in a place that can be accessed by you at any time. They explain the characteristics of the chemicals you may encounter, identify the proper personal protective equipment needed to handle them, and demonstrate the proper first aid treatment if you are exposed to the chemical. Here's another potentially fatal situation: the struck-by incident.
A subcontractor has been tasked with digging excavation in a very congested area. The subcontractor did not adequately barricade the swing radius and was not using a spotter. When the operator was going to reposition the mini excavator, he did not realize that another employee had come into his swing radius. And when in doing so, he struck that employee with a bucket, causing that employee to lose his leg. And that employee's quality of life will be negatively affected forever.
There are many pieces of equipment that are utilized on a construction site each day, some large, some small. Awareness of the site by both operators and pedestrians is very important. Some pieces of equipment may create blind spots where an operator temporarily loses visual location of sight from the operator's station or their mirrors. If you are operating a piece of equipment, you must know the zone of sight, where your spotter is, and awareness of pedestrian traffic. It is also important to stay clear of moving equipment if you are a pedestrian. If approaching operating equipment, you must make verbal and visual contact with the equipment operators or spotters before proceeding. Just because you see a piece of equipment doesn't mean the operator or spotter is aware of your location. Don't let this happen to you. The first step to general hand and power tool safety is to always make the right tool decision for the job and know how to use it. Powder-actuated tools use a .22 caliber shell to shoot fasteners into material. You must be trained and carry a certification card to operate one of these tools. And before you begin work, you must warn anyone around you. When you are finished using a tool, do not leave it unattended. If the tool is electrical, unplug it when finished or before any maintenance. Fires can easily erupt on job sites because of all the flammable materials. You're responsible to help ensure that flammable and combustible materials are properly stored and kept away from any source of ignition. You're also responsible to keep trash picked up. At Gray, we say, a clean job site is a safe job site. Always obey no smoking and flammable materials signs, and before beginning work, locate the fire extinguishers on your job site. Caught between incidents can occur in several ways on a construction site. It's important to your safety that you can recognize these hazards. Trenching and excavation collapses, unguarded parts and rigging of suspended loads, or rotating equipment.
Don't assume that people working around you see you, understand what you're doing. It's your responsibility to kind of make sure that you get some eye contact. You wave at them, you whistle at them, whatever it takes.
Being distracted on a construction site can be dangerous. When you're performing any work task, especially operating or working around equipment, or just walking on the site, cell phone use is not allowed. If you need to take or make a call, stop what you are doing, put yourself in a safe place, then make your call. Don't let this happen to you. Confined spaces come in many shapes and sizes. Here are a few things you need to know. A confined space is identified by three things. It is not made for continuous human occupancy. It's large enough for you to enter. It has a limited means of access and egress. A permit-required confined space will contain all of the above plus one or more of the following. A substance that has the ability to engulf or asphyxiate the entrant. A potentially hazardous atmosphere. A configuration with inward-sloping walls or a floor that slopes. Never enter a confined space until you have determined that there are no hazards. Always talk to your foreman prior to entry.
Multiple phone calls from multiple contacts and contractors on the site that we had a confined space situation that we had 3 employees unconscious in a manhole. Instantly my thoughts go to, this is very high potential for fatalities and multiple fatalities. When I walked upon the scene, the employees were above, sitting on the ground. I was preparing for, the absolute worst. As fortunate as we were for it not to happen in this particular incident, for me, I was very impacted at how close we came.
Spotters have an important job on a construction site. They are the eyes and ears of the operator in tight spaces and when the operator's vision is obstructed. They are also used to keep areas safe of traffic when overhead work is being performed. If you're a spotter, take your job seriously. You could save someone's life or prevent serious property damage. Danger tape, or red barricade tape, is used when a serious hazard is present, such as overhead work, open holes, or an unfinished stairwell. Never cross red barricade tape unless granted permission by an authorized employee. If you need access to an area that has been barricaded with red barricade tape, call the number on the contact information sign that is located on the barricade. Caution tape, or yellow barricade tape, does not indicate a potential hazard to people, but is typically used to protect equipment or areas under construction. Examples of this would be wet concrete, freshly painted walls, or to delineate a travel path through a work area. Prior to entering an area with yellow barricade tape, check the area for any hazards, then proceed with caution. Snow fence or safety fence is required for exclusion zones on Gray projects. It is most commonly used for tilt-up and precast operations. An exclusion zone permit shall be completed and signed by Gray before entry into the exclusion zone. Simple things matter. Improper lifting techniques can cause severe and permanent back injuries. You may be risking serious injury many times a day and not even know it. To make the proper lift, crouch down with the load between your legs and get a grip on the object. As you rise, lift with your legs, keeping your back vertical, and the load as close to your body as possible. To avoid the possibility of back injury, always ask someone to assist you in lifting a heavy load. The proper lift makes a difference. It's important to use a few common sense rules when storing and handling compressed gas cylinders. Make sure cylinders with different types of gas are separated by at least 20 feet and are secured or tied in an upright manner with caps on. Store all cylinders in an area where they will not be subject to flames or sparks. Ask your supervisor where cylinders are stored on your job site.
I'm Brian Jones, Gray's Chief Operating Officer, and the Gray Safety 6 are 6 simple and easy to understand things that if you incorporate into your daily work habits, you'll help promote a great safety culture on our job sites. It all starts with planning. Before you start the work, you have to have a plan. You have to work your Gray safety analysis for your daily work tasks. If you don't know the plan, get with your foreman or supervisor and make sure they explain it to you. Go fever. Common in our industry. There's pressures for schedule and budgets that we feel on our job sites as we're putting the work in place. Know how to recognize it and use stop. If you don't feel safe doing the work, get with your foreman or supervisor. Blink of an eye. That's how quickly an incident can occur. And once it starts, you can't stop it. Next is communication. Communication is critical to setting our safety culture on site. You have to be able to communicate well with the workers around you, and you have to be able to understand the plan from your foreman. On all Gray job sites, everyone has the opportunity to say stop. If something doesn't feel right or seems out of place or the plan's changing, make sure you say stop. Accountability. Everyone is accountable on Gray job sites. Craftspeople, foremen, management. We like to say if you see it, you own it. If you pass it by, you condone it. Our #1 core value is we put safety and quality of life first. And if you can incorporate the Gray Safety 6 into your daily work habits, you'll be sure to go home safely to your loved ones at the end of each workday.
All employees are required to follow the rules and regulations set by OSHA, Gray, and your employer. This video has offered you an overview of the common practices you're expected to follow while on the job. We have repeatedly emphasized one point in this video, and we'd like to stress it again. If you ever have any questions or feel you need further training, talk to your supervisor. Remember, it's always best to stop and ask.
At the end of this video, you'll be asked to sign a safety orientation sign-off sheet stating that you have viewed the video. The sheet also indicates that your supervisor has covered with you all the safety requirements for this job. Your signature symbolizes your commitment to take your responsibility seriously. We, along with your supervisor, your fellow employees, and the owner of this facility, and of course your own family, are counting on you to help keep yourself and those around you safe.
Hello, my name's Jim Grant. I'm the Vice President of Safety for Gray Construction. Construction is an exciting job, but it's a dangerous job too. At Gray, our #1 core value is that we put safety and quality of life first. Our top goal is to make sure that everyone that comes to our job site gets to go home to their loved ones at the end of the day. To achieve this, we need teamwork and a total commitment to our safety program. We also need you to make good, safe decisions, as well as understanding the risks associated with your work prior to starting them. It's important for you to put safety first for not only yourself, but for your loved ones. We're glad you're on our team.